Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Virtual Ninja Show. My name is Heike and I will be your host. And as you know, you might be able to win one of those Plüschcats. Please go to aka.ms/Plüschcat to get your chance. So today it's all about Defender for Identity and Defender for Endpoint better together. And I have my expert with me, and that is Daniel. Daniel, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. My name is Daniel Naim. I lead the security offering for Microsoft Defender for Identity. So everything that is related to alerts, investigation experience, remediation, the posture, I'm your guy when it comes to Microsoft Defender for Identity.
And I'm so happy to have you here on the show today. So let's quickly summarize. So we have the two products that we want to talk about. So Defender for Identity, in a nutshell, what is it?
Microsoft Defender for Identity is a solution that protects your identity infrastructure and the identity itself. Traditionally, we had a product that you would install on your Active Directory, and from that point on, any attacks that are either targeting the Active Directory or the accounts in the Active Directory were protected by Microsoft Defender for Identity. Not so long ago, we expand our identity offering to include other identity infrastructure including ADFS, ADCS, AAD Connect, and even expanding beyond the identity on the on-prem to the cloud like Azure Active Directory. And we even protect third-party solutions for identity access management like Okta.
And the other product that we are going to talk about is Defender for Endpoint, which is another big beast. And I quickly just summarize, right? So we have few pillars. We have Microsoft Defender Vulnerability Management as part of it. We have the protection layer part of it, where you can configure attack surface reduction rules, your next-gen AV. We have EDR as part of it for detecting threats that made it past the protection. And then automation is part of it. And then, so there is a lot in there to basically protect the endpoint, but then also alert you on suspicious activity, attacks, or something that is happening on the endpoint. So Daniel, why is it now so important to basically bring those two solutions in an environment together and look at users and devices?
Identities is a very interesting topic because when we are looking at where identities can live, we first and foremost where we have the place that the identities resides in and can be managed in, which can be obviously on premise or cloud. But identities just expands beyond that. Identity can be when you're logging into your mobile phone and it is you that accepting an MFA to logging into your company resources. Identity can be when you're logging into your personal computer and you're trying to do your day-to-day work. We realize that the information that we have from identity, if we only relies on the infrastructure or where the identity is managed, is limited to what we can do. This is why we decided to expand the data that we can get and use our friends from Microsoft Defender for Endpoint to create better offering for our unified customers. If we are looking at what normally security product is doing, we have different areas where we mapped out where we can bring a little bit of added value. The first and foremost for every security product is the ability to do an investigation and detections. Basically, there is something that is going on in the network and you want to be alerted on, and when it's being alerted, you want to triage that. Triaging means the actual part of investigation, but also you want to remediate this threat so it won't happen again. Another crucial part in every security product is the ability to lower your attacks to begin with. So this is like your security hygiene or posture. And the last bit that we were looking at with this integration with MDI and MDE together is the ability to build an inventory of all of the assets. It doesn't matter which assets are we talking about. It can be an asset of an identity or asset of an endpoint. We were looking at that and we realized that we can feed each other with an information to build that as well.
So basically, there is no use of a device without a user, and a user can't do anything without basically using any kind of device, I would assume.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. So the combination is there. I know from MDE that there is a couple of events that are coming from user activities, but they are most likely not as rich as all the um, events that Defender for Identity or alerts can raise and bring together with, like, that are on an endpoint. Am I
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
User timeline can be built based on all of its activity, no matter where they are coming from. Obviously, every product has its own view about the user activities. If I'm logging into my device and device is not connected to the network, um, this will never reach MDI. If I'm doing something offline, those will be captured by MDE only. If there is something that is related to my permissions and is related to what my user can do and it is being changed, this only is being tracked in Microsoft Defender for Identity. So if you'll go to the device that the user, if you'll go to the user timeline in M365 Defender, you will find rich timeline of the user activities, no matter where they are coming from, enriching each other with information like, for example, the logon activities and the permissions that are coming from an MDI, and also local users that are coming from Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which we are not familiar with. So let's see it in action. When investigating such a complex incident like that, what I usually like to do is to go over by all of the active alerts so it can tell me a story of what's happening. Usually, it will be sorted by the time those alerts happening so we can have a clear timeline of what was happening in the incident from start to finish. And then, even with simple English, just reading, I can understand the attack story that was going on. Obviously, there is also the incident graph that tells me like what is the connection between all of the involved assets. So let's pick the few first alerts just to understand the story that is behind this specific incident. We have an account enumeration, which is typically an attack that starts from an MDI when a potential malicious user is trying to find what users exist in the organization, what administrators or what users has different permissions. And then after that, the attacker found a user that it sounds that he wants to logging into, and then this is when he's opening an RDP session to this user, which RDP stands for Remote Desktop Protocol, and then he's trying to log in. And then we see that Jeff is the user that is involved in this alert. We see many tries to connect into this user with a theft of his password. And all of these are alerts that are coming from a combination of an MDI and an MDE together that was correlated into one single incident. So let's go from here to the user page. After I got the initial information about who is the user, what I usually like to do myself is to see what are the alerts that this user was involved in. And again, those alerts can be coming from MDI or MDE. But if I want to get information which is more raw and to deep dive into each activity that the user is doing, I can do that by going into the timeline and see all of the activities of the user that are coming from Microsoft Defender for Endpoint or for Microsoft Defender for Identity. All appear in one place, which makes my investigation experience much more easy.
Do you see any events right here already, either in the timeline or in the alerts, that only because these two products were looking together?
Yes, we have this concept in M365 Defender, which is called alert to event correlations. This means that if either product is creating an alert, let's say that MDI is creating a suspicious alert, MDE will start triggering certain activities which usually wouldn't have been triggered because they were known to be legitimate. But in this case, we have this LDAP alert, which is a commonly used technique to do enumeration in the network from the endpoint, and then we see successful network logins. Obviously, those network login happens every time in the network. So in order to reduce the clutter and reduce the information that we are passing into Microsoft 365 Defender, we only chose this alert specifically because it was followed up by an alert that was coming from either product. We have this kind of correlation for alert to event from either product, but I think what is more important to mention is the fact that we are doing an event to event correlation. So suspicious event in one place can trigger a suspicious event in the other place, which can be potentially correlated into one alert as well. But even sometimes it will be just two different events that the only reason that they are there is because the other product told, hey, we have something going on here.
So there is actually a lot in the background, in the backend that happens if both products are present. So as you said, like an alert gets raised by one of them, and then the other one's like, oh, okay, so probably it's not just something not suspicious. Because of that alert, there will be more events logged. Or
Yes.
I mean, events not probably, because I think the timeline, machine timeline, user timeline has all the individual things, but brought together into the alert. Okay, so then if you see now the timeline and you dig deeper, what are you trying to find right now here in the user timeline?
The user timeline usually helps me to investigate what happened prior and after an alert was occurring. Let's say if it was a user that was got compromised by potential attacker, and then we see an event that the user changed his phone number, we usually relate those into an MFA techniques. So the attacker will be the one that accepting a prompt for an MFA to access high privilege servers. So we can easily distinguish between what is an activity and what is an alert. So the alert has this red icon, and those are an alerts,
Mhm.
and it says see in the type that's, and then you can see what happened prior and post to those type of activities with the timeline. And obviously we have rich filtering, so you can specifically filter only on the data that you're interested to see, or based on specific alerts as well. Obviously, in my
Okay.
environment, I have only Active Directory, but in real life scenarios, we can see more.
So, what else is interesting here to look at this specific either
Yes.
user or incident?
Yes. Let's say this we have this user and we decided this user got compromised, which obviously is a sad story, but we can mitigate that and we can make sure this doesn't happen in the future again. So let's say that I found out this user was compromised, and what I want to do is to disable the user. All I need to do is go to the action area, which is right in this side, and then I decide what's going to be the outcome of the alerts that I've seen. I can decide that I want to disable the user in Active Directory. Obviously, these are manual activities, which are nice, but in real life scenarios, they don't help when, let's say, that you have a ransomware going on in the network and you want to mitigate it as fast as humanly possible. This is why we again partner with Microsoft Defender for Identity to correlate those activities and those ransomware attacks into a playbook that whenever MDE are seeing such activities, the user will be disabled automatically using MDI. This is a very powerful integration that we are providing. And in general, in M365 Defender, we really believe that there is one aspect which is the data, and there is one aspect which is the remediation. The remediation can come from MDE, can come from an MDI, can come from MDO, or such, and the activities and the data can come from a different one. It doesn't matter which one is triggering the activity. They are agnostic to each other, and then you can take action on the user or on device based on each other activities. Human operated ransomware is a very good example for that. We have many stories where MDI was quickly to mitigate those kind of attack just because we saw those activities from MDE and alerts.
What is the difference between disabling the user in AD or suspending the user in AAD?
That is actually a great question because there is a lot of confusion going on, and it's a good opportunity to explain this once and for all. Mostly, users will be hybrid. This means that every user can reside both in the on-premise world and in the cloud. Uh, there is usually a server that synchronizes the status between the on-premise and the cloud. So when a user is disabled in the Active Directory, it will be synchronized into Azure Active Directory within, on average, 15 minutes. Obviously, since this user is an hybrid user, I can decide where I want to disable it, either in Active Directory or Azure Active Directory. Obviously, in most cases, just disabling Active Directory should be enough, but in some cases, you want to disable them both at the same time to reduce the time it takes to sync in both places. So what we usually do and what we usually instruct customers to do is go disable the user in Active Directory, go disable the user in Azure Active Directory, so you don't need to rely on this 15 minutes sync on average if something going south and the user is trying to logging into company resources either on the cloud or the on-premise.
And then if a user is disabled in AD and the user is logged on onto a device, right, at the same time right now when you disable it, what happens? What's the story of the user experience?
Yes, if a user is disabled, this means that every application that he will try to access will tell him that he has no access and he needs to contact company resources to sort this one out. And the next time that he will logging into his own device, he will be locked out until the user is re-enabled again. We are not kicking out from the session yet. This is a work that we are doing with MDE, a little bit of a hint for the future. But as of right now, when a user is disabled, he can still access his own device, but accessing resources either on premise or on the cloud, external resources will be forbidden.
Okay, so a last question on this topic. So, because we have automation that can help resolve incidents and the individual alerts, would our automation do both as well, like disable it in AD and suspend the user in
Yes.
AAD, or only one of those?
Yes,
Both.
yes, of
Okay.
course, of course. Obviously, it is only relevant for cases where the user is hybrid. For users which are cloud only, suspending the user in Azure Active Directory should be enough, and vice versa. If the user is on premise, just doing it on the Active Directory is enough. This is just a use case that is relevant when the user is both in the cloud and on premise.
Okay. If you go to the overview, do you see if that user is a hybrid user? Is there like a information for me?
Going from the user page, I can see all of the accounts that this user is relevant for. In this regard, we can see this is an on-premise user and is also an Office 365, which is an indication this user is a cloud as well, not necessarily Azure Active Directory, but has access to applications in the cloud.
Good. So back to our topic, MDI and MDE better together. And sorry, it's Defender for Identity and Defender for Endpoint. We always use those not allowed abbreviations. I think the incident is clear because of various events and alerts, both together raised that, and only because of both of them together, the whole story was basically clear. Only the endpoint could have not shown all the user activities happening somewhere else, and the same vice versa. What else do we want to look at here?
So obviously you don't have incidents all of the time. And sometimes you just want to understand what is your identity inventory or what are all of your identities that you have in the network. And again, as we mentioned, identities can come from different places like endpoint and the identity infrastructure. And this is why we built this identity inventory table, which is very similar to device inventory. Just in this regard, it's containing all of the identities in the network. And in this case, we can see all of the cloud identities. We can also see identities from third party, like specifically Microsoft Azure. And we can see identities that are coming from Active Directory, and we can see identities that are coming from Endpoint as well. With this identity inventory, I can see all of the users in my organization. I can see which one has higher investigation priority than others. I can see what groups each user is part of, and I can take remediation actions directly from the identity inventory if I want to act upon accounts that I find to be suspicious. Obviously, I can pivot to each user page directly from here, and this is very crucial information that can help the IT managers of the organization to understand what are all of the identities, what are their permissions, but also from a security perspective, when you want to understand which user is as what type of permission and what alerts they were involved in.
Okay, cool. So I think another big topic would also be advanced
Yes.
hunting. Yeah, you're almost getting there because you can correlate or like combine different tables from the different products. Do you have a couple of examples of how Defender for Identity and Defender for Endpoint events are coming together in a good query?
Yes. So obviously, we really believe that exposing all of the data to the customers so they can do whatever they want with it, and MDI is no surprise is doing that as well. So in advanced hunting, you can see all of the data that MDI can provide, whether this is the identity inventory or all of the logon activities or the directory events, and all of that can be easily correlated with any data source that you want. For example, with Office, or in our topic with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. What I usually like to do when I need to do an investigation with a customer around MDI alerts is to correlate data that is coming from both places to understand a little bit more about the story behind the alert. So let's say that we have a DC sync, which is a common attack technique that attackers are using in order to synchronize the DC into a compromised server and basically stealing all of the content of the domain controller, which is all of the user group, all of the users, and all of the computers, and all of the passwords, of course, and the ability to create certificates in a certain manner after doing DC sync. So obviously, this is a story which is entirely MDI story. This is a synchronization of domain controllers. But sometimes you want to know what was the process that was initiating the DC sync on the remote DC where MDI has coverage for. And this is where MDI can come in very, very handy. And to pinpoint a specific point of time and then find out what was the process that was initiating this synchronization is something that is very crucial to deciding whether it's a true positive, whether it's a benign true positive, which is, let's say, this is a new server that I onboarded and MDI still doesn't have coverage for. I also have other examples for identity queries. Some of them can be easily accessed because we have them published to all of our customers. So in suggested, this is a good example for data that is coming from both places. So in this one, we have identity logons that are coming from the Active Directory, and we are correlating this data with device network activities in order to find out any logons that has their password in clear text as part of the authentication activities, and the connection was successful. So let's say that I have an attacker that was sniffing the packets between the domain controller and the endpoint. He can find out the password easily because they are not encrypted and they are going through an unauthenticated LDAP authentication, which has the password in clear text. This is a prime example for something that can be found thanks to the integration with identity logon activities and the device network from MDE.
And what would be the result here? What would I see again? Like show me find processes that perform
Yes.
okay with clear text. Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
it finds the tool that was performing this activity, and then you want to prevent this tool from using authentication again. Obviously, there are other
Mhm.
remediations on the identity level, which are turning off certain logon protocols to prevent them from activating.
Okay, I think Daniel, that was a great demo that showed us at the various places in the portal how these two products are better together in protecting and detecting and resolving incidents. Do you have any links that we can share with the audience where they can learn a little bit more, or some things that you would like for them to try out? Any call to actions, maybe?
Yes, I can share some links to everything is written in our public documentation, including all of the activities and including some examples for things that you can use yourself. Also, all of the alerts are publicly available in our public documentation. So this can be a good pivot point to start with investigation of MDI alerts. If you're only using MDE today and you're considering using MDI, I think this is something that is a must have. Our specialty is knowing identities A to Z. And I think with these two data coming together, this is a coverage that will protect your identities with no doubt.
Okay. So thank you so much, Daniel, for being my expert on today's show. For everyone, if you are still looking to get one of those, go to that link that is here on the screen. And yeah, with that, thanks everyone. So make sure that you turn on MDI if you already have it. If not, check it out. You can sign up for a trial. Same the other way around. If you need endpoint protection together with your identity protection, check out the trial for Defender for Endpoint. And with that, I hope you enjoyed another episode, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.